you need to be self-motivated. You need to seek out opportunities and optimizations, or you will not make it far. Create goals, strive to be more efficient in the ways that you get things done, and always remember there is something to optimize.
If this community did not exist, I would have mostly taken the traditional MBA route. Since I was involved in the cloud cost space, this gave me an opportunity that the community was so helpful to get involved here.
There is such a rich ecosystem, and people do move about them, as Alee kind of pointed out, and Simar, it's just kind of like looking at where to go next. So it's just to emphasize how rich this ecosystem is, and there's many different journeys away through it.
It's becoming more and more expensive to run one of these programs, but there's a reason that they pay so well. There's a lot of accountability and responsibility for being a fiduciary owner of these millions of dollars of cloud spends at these companies, and being a trusted shared service bureau to all cloud consuming units, many departments that are having a lot of data. There's just a lot to do.
All right, folks, we're going to kick off with actually a recap of last year's X.
It's so special to see everyone here and what they bring to the table.
If you're in the cloud, you're going to be paying for it. So there's always a need for FinOps.
It's about making connections and talking to others and getting to know your peers.
Introducing J.R. Stallman, Executive Director of the FinOps Foundation.
Everybody's got the same story, same challenges. So as a community, we're working it together.
The intersection between FinOps and DevOps is going to get closer together, and it's really going to become more of how do we optimize in terms of an engineering space as well, too.
Everybody here is thinking and talking about the same thing, struggling with the same challenges, and just want an opportunity to learn from each other and just get better.
And there's none of us competing with each other. When people learn to do something, they're sharing it.
We're heavily involved. We're always collaborating. There's open communication, dialogue. You've got to have that to be successful.
Anytime anyone needs anything, just reach out, because anything we can do to help each other and help the community is why we're all here.
All right. So moving ahead to hopefully more exciting things. Steve Trask from our team pulled this chart up last week. It kind of blew our minds of the space that you're all involved with and out there, which is a list of Google searches and interest trending for FinOps. And we've been showing various versions of this last year as things were spicing up. But beginning of the year, we really got an amazing spike up and to the right. All the work you all have been doing out there around the events and activities, things like Microsoft joining the foundation was really exciting to see, and some cool community numbers to share. We're coming up on 10,000 people in this community, and these are the vetted membership, the practitioners and folks who have joined really from across all different industries, and thousands of certified practitioners now, many of whom are on this call, and of course the small and mighty but growing certified professional list as well. So it's really cool to see this. We're kind of taking bets about how large the community is by the end of the year. Curious your take where that'll end up, but pretty cool since we started with just 300 of you a couple years ago. As we were talking about in the pre-roll, we're back in person in so many great locations. I'm wearing this badge, which is actually for next week in Amsterdam. We're having our first community day in Europe. We're also trialing these for X. I don't usually wear a name badge when I'm in the office, but I thought I would wear it as a special occasion for this. But we have road shows happening all over the place. That one there, as Joe was mentioning in the comments, is from the DC event that we did last week. We've got a Chicago one coming up, New York City, London, Stockholm. There's a bunch more of these coming. You can see them kind of hinted on the side. So stay tuned as those come together, and check them out on our website, finops.org/events. We have also restarted the meetup program, and this is for all of you who are in locations where we're not bringing a full road show necessarily yet, where if you want to run meetups in your location, we have a FinOps certified meetup organizer program. It's free, there's no cost or anything attached to that, where we can help support, promote your local meetups. We're doing one in Sydney on April 3rd. Actually, Mike Fuller and I are going to be there at the Atlassian office That one, Tiago is doing one in Brazil. We just shipped him down a great thing of swag and signage for it, and looking for more folks as well who want to potentially participate. So definitely email us if you want to be a part of that program. We are also moving ahead with the FinOps open cost and usage specification, which is the open billing data project that many of you have contributed to. This is really exciting because it is something that is going to allow a normalization of cloud spend data between the big cloud providers. It's also going to provide a schema for other providers who are coming in to the FinOps space to bring in data. Think SaaS, think PaaS, think all those things to get things aligned so that we can start to get better visibility and trust into the data. So this project is in the formation phase. Check out focus.finops.org if you want to follow along with it. Really looking to get everybody involved. If you're a practitioner, sharing your information and data, once you've signed that CLA, there's IP associated with this, so we're trying to keep everything clean. And then, of course, all the vendors and clouds as well as part of it. Reminder, this is an open call, and we're going to be having breakouts later. So code of conduct, want everybody to contribute and participate when we get to that section, but also, of course, be respectful of others and their ideas, treat them kindly and well, and please don't offer sales pitches as part of this. We really want to hear your learnings, not advertisements. And on the legal antitrust fine print, this is a space where we ask that you don't share any confidential information. A good measure of that is if something's not published on the web, you shouldn't be talking about it in our forums. And with that, let's get into our keynotes. The first speaker we have today is Alee Whitman. Alee has been in the space for quite a while, and I think holds the distinction of having been in more different types of roles. She's been a consultant at one of the big firms. She's now a practitioner at the Disney company. She's been on the vendor side at AWS, working on things like the optics team and the cloud intelligence dashboards. She was also a keynote speaker at the FinOps X last year, and we're excited to hear from Alee and her career journey as she goes through the content here. Alee, over to you.
Thanks, JR. And also, we need to get some Seattle Roadshow items on that calendar too. For folks,
planned, just not yet scheduled.
Definitely. For folks that I haven't met yet, my name's Alee Whitman, and I'm a senior staff product engineer at the Walt Disney Company. Disney is a large company, so to help you understand where I sit, I fall under our corporate enterprise technology segment, working for our amazing VP of Cloud and Data Transformation Engineering, who reports to the Walt Disney Company's CIO. Today, I'll be sharing some of the skill sets you need to succeed in various FinOps careers. Before I dive into the skill sets, I want to share a little bit about my FinOps journey. For folks who caught my session at FinOps X, this slide probably looks familiar. There are so many different FinOps hats out there, but I've been lucky enough to grow and experience FinOps across various roles, including a consultant, vendor, and now as a practitioner, or as I'll forever call myself, a customer. My background is in finance, but I've always loved the technology space. So I got my first experience of FinOps back in 2018 while I was a technology consultant at Accenture. If you're newer to FinOps, consulting is one of the best ways to get started and figure out where you fit and are interested to grow in. What started out as a project to help understand cloud cost turned into so much more. I took every opportunity I could to meet with experts across Accenture, vendors, and my client teams to learn and understand how I could add more value. That led me to my next journey as one of the first people on the brilliant Alex Head's optics teams. It wasn't even called optics when we got started. Optics was quite possibly the most fun team to be on. My whole role was to help AWS's largest, most complex, and strategic customers run efficiently and maximize their benefit on AWS. While I was at AWS, I was able to partner with some amazing peers to create and scale the cloud intelligence dashboards, or what you might know as kudos. If you haven't checked them out yet, I highly recommend. Almost a year ago, I made the switch from vendor to practitioner, dedicated to helping drive all things cloud cost management, billing, and optimization across Disney. My favorite part of my new role is I get to partner with all people across the organization. There are so many remarkable people across Disney, and it's mind-blowing to see the ways the innovations they are driving will shape the future of their respective areas. It also doesn't hurt that Mickey and Minnie are your coworkers. There are so many different paths my FinOps journey could have taken. And if you're sitting here in a similar position to where I was, or trying to figure out what your next road looks like, it's okay not to know. The best advice I have for you is to never turn down a chance to learn about an opportunity, even if you aren't looking. All right, Jared, next slide. While wearing my various FinOps hats, I found a handful of skill sets that I've needed to succeed. The first is analytical or financial skills. I had zero, and I mean zero, FinOps experience when I got started. I didn't even know what an EC2 instance was. But my background is in finance. Being able to analyze financial data and make informed decisions based on your findings is one skill everyone in the roles that I have been in should excel at. Data-driven. Many organizations' AWS cost and usage report is over 1 billion line items for a single month. I won't go into the cost and usage report, but everyone who knows me knows I'm crazy about the CUR. Data is your best friend. You need to be comfortable working with large, complex data sets and be able to articulate and tell a story using this data so that your teams are able to use it to run efficiently. Embrace change. Almost every activity in FinOps requires someone to make a change. Just like we ask our teams and engineers to embrace optimization, we need to embrace change. I would not be here today if I stayed in my comfort zone. Change is good and helps you grow. Be adaptable, and make sure you're always pushing yourself to change. Be curious. FinOps has grown so much in the past few years. It seems like just yesterday I actually got started, but it's crazy to think that it's already been almost 5 years. But we're still just scratching the surface. Continue to push yourself to learn. Stay relevant and stay excited by continuously learning. Challenge yourself to learn something new every day, meet with a new team every week, and try and expand your interests across all of FinOps and the space beyond it as well. Build your community. I consider this to be one of the most important skill sets. Being curious, training, and building community helps level up expertise and innovation. Make connections, partner, collaborate, and find your people. Every single one of you have a superpower. I've been lucky enough to find amazing people in the FinOps Foundation and throughout my career that challenge me to get out of my comfort zone and continue to grow. This skill set is one of the most important because it requires you to have excellent collaboration and communication skills. Relationships are key in FinOps. One of our SRE directors once said, getting things done well and with speed requires empathy and trust. I couldn't agree more. It helps to have a talented team. The right type of leadership and organizational culture is key to developing high-performing teams. A deep understanding of FinOps. While this seems obvious, you actually really don't need this to get started. I definitely didn't have it. But you do need to have a deep understanding of FinOps to grow. If you're in a FinOps role, at the beginning, you should at least be familiar with various cost structures, pricing models, and resource optimization techniques. It also helps to have a solid understanding of cloud computing services. As you progress in your career, you should also progress in your understanding as FinOps. Become known as a thought leader in an area you're interested in. Join a working group. Find your area of fit. Self-motivated. For folks who have been in the FinOps world for a while, I think you'll agree. You need to be self-motivated. You need to seek out opportunities and optimizations, or you will not make it far. Create goals, strive to be more efficient in the ways that you get things done, and always remember there is something to optimize. Lastly, think beyond. You defined your success and have the ability to shape what FinOps can be in the coming years. There's no limit to what you can do. I don't know what's next in my FinOps journey, but I do know that I will continue to push myself to think bigger, learn, embrace change, and build my community and grow. The way I use these skill sets may vary depending on my role or the hats that I've been wearing. But of all these skills, they've been pivotal in every role that I've been in for my success. So to close it out, JR on the next slide. It's only fitting to end with a quote from Walt Disney himself. We keep moving forward, opening new doors and doing new things because we're curious, and curiosity keeps leading us down new paths. So everyone, if I have one takeaway for you, it's to stay curious and continue to help shape the future of FinOps. Thank you so much, JR, for letting me speak on this today.
Thank you, Alee. So we'd love to hear more in the breakouts as we get in there, but I'm curious, what was the most surprising thing for you switching from the sort of vendor side to the practitioner / customer side?
I think it actually probably is one of the things that I found most interesting is the optimizations that some of my teams actually are wanting to go for first. It's not the ones I would have started with, and it's really shifted the way that I think about working with them and approaching it, and really opened my eyes to kind of a new way of thinking about things that actually has increased the action we're able to take.
Interesting. Did you find that some of the things that you thought folks should be doing were harder or easier than expected?
I'd say a lot harder. And being at AWS and working with a lot of different customers, it's interesting to see what it's like to actually be in my shoes and working with the team I used to be on, because I think that's where I really see the shift in the services and the way that when we just kind of work together and change the messaging a little bit, we're able to excel so much further.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing your journey. Looking forward to seeing you at more of the events.
Definitely.
And with that, we're going to move into the next section. As we mentioned, oops, this got moved to the front. Lots of new speakers coming in. I wanted to give a shout out and thank you to all the folks who applied to speak at the event this summer. We had, I want to say, almost 300 submissions. Unfortunately, had to decline a lot of people and really had a solid rubric of trying to get the right type of mix of speakers as well as content around 200, 300 level deeper content. We're really trying to focus in that area and different parts of the framework. So for those of you who want to speak at future events and maybe weren't able to get into speaking at X, we're putting together now, and literally I got a text during this that this just launched while we were talking. There's now a speaker proposal. Thank you, Steve Trask and team, for putting this together. Spot on finops.org/events. We're looking to consolidate all the speaker requests. We've got all these roadshows now. We've got summits. We've got X. We've got the Community Day in Europe tomorrow or next week. So if you want to speak, please jump on here and check out all the events and figure out what you might want to speak in. And we're going to try and put together a better, more coordinated process because there's so much great talent out there and stories to share. On that topic, Stacy, can you share a little bit about the scholarship information that we've been doing the last few months?
Yeah, you got everybody. I'm just so excited about this community and what we're able to do. And one of the things that we've been really wanting to do is making sure that we're giving back to people that maybe the investment is too much for them for education. And we want to make sure that whenever there's a need that we can support that. So I'm going to tell you we're failing at something, and we're failing hard, but in the most amazing and best way ever possible. Last year, we had a goal of having $100,000 in scholarships. We failed. We gave like 100 and some change in scholarships. This year, we set our amount for 2023 to $200,000 that we wanted to award in scholarships. Folks, we are failing miserably because as of the end of February, we have awarded $137,000 in scholarships, and we are not going to cap this at $200,000. We want to make sure that if there is a need for somebody and they need assistance for any type of scholarship, that we can support that. So we've done $137,000 in scholarships this year. This has gone to 29 different countries, 175 people. And I really want to highlight something because I want to really make sure that people understand how need-based this is. The majority of our scholarships this year, so far, 63% have gone to Brazil. There's definitely the cost of like the certified practitioner training is very cost prohibitive for folks living in Brazil. We recognize that 63% of our scholarships have gone there, 11% have gone to India. I'm always happy to share this information with folks. So if you know of somebody that needs a scholarship that is needs-based, please have them apply at learn.finops.org, and let's see how much more we can fail this year. Since obviously we're going to hit $200,000 quite early in the year.
With the failing, it seems like you've been really successful. But
it's a successful fail. I'm happy that we didn't think that there was that big of a need, and I'm glad to be wrong on that one.
That's great. Thank you for the update, Stacy, and for everybody who's been supporting that program. On that topic, we are funded by training and memberships. We've got almost 100 different corporate members now, and I want to give a big shout out to our premier vendor partners who make a lot of this possible, including all the scholarship funding that we're able to do for partners, for practitioners around the world. These are organizations who are heavily invested in the FinOps space. Some of them are clouds, some of them are consultants, some of them are platforms. The great thing about these organizations, we're going to hear from one of them today, Kyndryl, is that they're also heavily involved in working groups and helping to share best practices. There's so much talent and expertise at these organizations. And I wanted to welcome one of our newer ones, who is today's summit is brought to you by, which is Kyndryl. And so Robert Erickson and Dave Nielsen are going to be sharing a little bit about their view on the space and talking about the ways that they're also going to be plugging into the FinOps Foundation. And Robert is also joining the FinOps Foundation board, which is now made up of over 30 industry experts. So over to you, Robert and Dave.
Yeah, thanks, JR. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes, you sound great. Okay,
perfect. Just wanted to thank everybody for their time and give you a little bit of introduction about myself and Kyndryl. Kyndryl is recently spun off as of January of 22 rather, from IBM. We were their services arm, over 90,000 employees today. We're represented in most major markets. We have over 270,000 certified certifications within the cloud and hyperscalers, over 4,600 clients today, most of them in the Fortune 100 or 500 globally. So we have a big footprint in the system integrator and global system integrator space. A few years ago, we recognized the complexity. Our customers were coming to us and saying, look, other than the IT complexity of bringing cloud in, we're dealing with customers that have mainframes, they have data centers, they're introducing cloud, they have edge environments, containerized environments. We have even quantum computing environments are starting to come on. So as all this complexity starts to converge, the next logical question is, how do I control my spend in this? It's sort of flying blind. We had a large telco provider, the CFO of a large telco provider in New Jersey, recently tell us that, hey, look, I have no control and no visibility over the spend. It's so dynamic and changing. How do we bring order to this chaos so that we can identify where we should be putting our resources? So we had already been exploring something similar to FinOps internally. And when we saw the community and the interest around that and a similar capability and thought leadership emerging from this organization, we said, let's partner and contribute how we're seeing things develop across our customer base. So there's 4 major areas that we see starting to develop. One is we hear all the time, hey, we don't have enough skills in this. As you heard earlier, a lot of people are starting fresh. They may have a financial background or they may have a technical background, but no one has really put it all together, and there's not enough of the people that do exist in that. So we hear that as the #1 ask from the communities. The rising cost of clouds. I can't tell you how many times in the beginning of 10 years ago, people were saying, I think the cloud will save me money, only to find out that cloud done poorly actually costs you a lot more in the end. So how do you manage that? Line of business buyers. There's a recent study by one of the major analyst groups that said 90% of buy decisions will become for IT will come from the business units themselves. They'll have the budget and the decision making by 2025. If that's true, then most of those organizations are not well versed in the deep things of technology. So how do we expect them to manage the spend for technology? And then there's no common governance model for finance. Typically we see the financial departments talk in terms of things like depreciation and budgets and investments, and you hear IT departments talk about environments and availability and utilization, and they miss each other. So there's no common governance model or even language and semantics across that. So we're really excited to contribute. And with that, I'll turn it over to my partner, Dave Nielsen, to go through some of this. So Dave, do you want to go through?
Yeah, well, I think we got a little limited on time, Robert. So maybe we'll just go. One of the asks that we have is how did we build, how did we build our team? So JR, do you want to just go to the next slide? Yeah. So one of those things, right, is how are we going to build our team? How did Kyndryl build their teams? Right. Not everybody's going to find an Alee Whitman that's super curious to take to be an analyst and then, drive all the way down to a practitioner. Right. So what we recognize is that what has created this problem, right? So as we start to think about the shift left in accountability, what's really happened, right? What's happened is back in the in the 1900s, when we had a on-prem environment, cost was looked at once a year, right? And it's changing significantly. And so we've created a fantastic thing for our engineers and our architects to be able to respond rapidly and innovate business. But we've shifted the financial accountability to an engineering and an architecture team that's not traditionally trained in cost, right? And so educating or building folks that are cloud trained financial analysts, cost educated architects, and cloud focused automation engineers to wrap around your business. JR, if you can go to the next slide, right? To wrap around your business to create a common language within your team. Those are the skills that we need to be chasing. As I said, not everybody will start as a financial analyst and become a cloud engineer or architect. What we need to do is we need to bridge the conversations between executives and business owners and have some visibility in that space when we're looking at how we're going to implement an executive's vision. We need to be able to bridge the conversation between our business owners and the engineering teams to put in company-wide best practices on stuff like rate optimization and instance types. We need to be able to bridge the conversation between the finance and the executives and the engineering teams to sort of defend when sometimes advisor recommendations are inaccurate, right? So, we can't have finance telling the engineering teams that we should change an instance type on an SAP environment. And so if you go to the next slide, what we've done here at Kyndryl is that we've created these personas, and we have squads of these personas. And so I think that this is kind of the base unit that if you're looking to build a team, these are the personas that you want to build on your team. And then let me just talk a small bit about scale. I think you can have a smaller financial analyst team. You may consider when you're building your FinOps team or squad, scaling your architecture persona. If you have a complex environment like multi-cloud, you may have a GCP and an AWS and an Azure architect. You may scale in that way. And then as you get into the kind of more difficult part of FinOps, which is usage optimization, you're going to scale these automation engineers, and you want to send these automation engineers to training, because as I said, engineers, and I come from this background, folks, so I take accountability for a lot of the problems in FinOps, but engineers are traditionally trained to look at security and resiliency and uptime, and aren't necessarily aware of the fact that they're creating cost. And so the more that we can train them to become FinOps practitioners, the more they'll recognize the impact of their actions, and be able to, as a part of design from an architecture perspective and implementation and run from an engineering perspective, be more effective for our organizations. And so if you can keep these particular personas in mind, I think you'll be successful in building a FinOps team. I think that's it for me, JR.
Awesome. Thank you, Robert and Dave. Appreciate also, Dave, you jumping ahead on some of the time there. The slide he did skip, shared one of the things I did want to shout out that Kyndryl's been great about, which is they've got almost 100 people certified already in the organization, and they've been leaning in to some of the working groups. We're going to hear about working groups later, unit economics and ITAM and some of those areas, which is exactly how we want to see all of you collaborating together. But I want to celebrate a few folks who've been recently posting about their experiences for the two programs. This, as you've seen in this, is a very important part of our mission, which is trying to help fill the sort of skills gap in the market with all the jobs that are out there and so many people trying to figure out how to fill them. So at the end of this, we're going to have Brent Eubanks from Box, or after the next speaker, talk about how he's built his complex FinOps team at different levels. But first, we wanted to step back to somebody earlier in the FinOps journey and hear from Simar Arora, who is going to talk about the beginning of his FinOps journey and some of the programs they've been doing. Stacy, do you mind making an intro here, and we'll pass over to Simar shortly?
Yeah, so Simar, I can't help but smile whenever I see or talk about Simar anyway. So Simar is someone that came to us early on, and he just a curious person in general, and asking so many amazing questions. How can he get involved? How can he take advantage of some of the amazing programs we have? And I'll let him talk about that. But I believe even scholarships was one of those. And when he was with Cornell Tech, being a student at Cornell Tech, he was so enthusiastic and says, listen, we have a project that we could be doing. Is there any way that we can collaborate with the FinOps Foundation and the community? And he's just one of the most enthusiastic, enjoyable people to be around. And I'll let him tell his story, but we're so happy to have him part of this community. And I've been personally just excited to watch this growth happen. And I'm excited to see what's going to happen next with him. So Simar, this is you. Shine.
Thank you so much, Stacy. That was such a nice introduction. Okay, thank you so much. So I'll just start with my journey so far. So I did my engineering in electronics and computer science from India in 2016. Did work for Goldman Sachs in the risk division for around 2.5 years. Then was lucky to join a cloud cost optimization company in around 2019. It was pure luck. I landed on this domain and worked on usage optimization and rate optimization for around 3 years. After that, decided that want to upskill my business skills. That is why MBA was the next logical step. Currently, I have been learning organizational cultural practices like product management, and have been actively involved with the foundation on some projects. Yes, next slide. Okay, so how did I got involved with the FinOps Foundation? So the credit belongs to Dieter, who is one of the earliest FinOps ambassadors. So earlier when I was working with the vendor, so I used to sometimes present with Dieter or regularly chat with Dieter. And that's when I was moving to the US, I just reached out to Dieter. I was always fascinated by his job in cloud financial management and capacity planning at Roku, Google. How do I get into this space? So Dieter was like, there is this organization, FinOps.org. Why don't you get certified? And let's talk. So did get certified 2 weeks later, and had the opportunity to meet Dieter at AWS reInvent 2022. So has been a wonderful journey, like getting a mentor like him so early in my career. Yes, next slide. Okay, Next slide. Okay. Yes. So how did the collaboration with the foundation happen? So was moved to US around May 2022. And at that time I saw FinOps X is happening. So as Stacy was mentioning, did reach out to Stacy that I'm currently a student. I have practiced FinOps for 3 years when it was not called FinOps. So can I get involved in the FinOps X that is happening in Austin, Texas on June 20th and June 21st? Stacy was very generous, provided me a scholarship to attend that. And after that, while I was at the foundation, at the conference, so there was a talk by Mark Butcher on sustainability on the cloud. So got super interested on the sustainability space. It was like for 3 years, I worked on the cost side of the picture. Should I explore the carbon side of the picture as well? And will people be interested in it? So there was a collaboration opportunity with Cornell here. So I reached out to Stacy as she was mentioning and just posted this particular project. Want to explore the sustainability space. Was very lucky to find 4 other people with me from the cloud space to join me on this journey. So yes, next slide. Okay, so what was the project actually? So the project was around how might we reduce the environmental impact of public cloud workloads. Just to set the picture right, the total carbon emissions are currently at 38 billion tons. 4% of that is contributed by the cloud industry, and the airline industry is currently contributing 2.5%. Further, the cloud industry is expected to grow by 5 to 7x in the next 5 years. So this carbon problem is continuing to stay, and it might be time that developers start paying attention to it. Yes, next slide. Okay, so how did we go about doing FinOps research? So for that, we interviewed around 30 people. These people were different personas from FinOps vendors, people working on enterprises and cloud service providers. So these were the top pain points that we realized while doing this research, that enterprises are mostly not aware of the impact of their cloud workloads on the environment. The cost picture is coming clearer now. So the carbon has to start picking up after that, I believe. Secondly, the carbon footprint data provided by cloud service providers currently cannot pinpoint what is the exact carbon impact of a workload. Thirdly, we conducted a lot of stakeholder interviews and figured out that this work will involve a lot of FinOps personas in a company to come together to solve this problem. The main solution that we figured out after doing interviews were that if vendors and enterprises can get data in an API format to integrate in their applications, so a cost and carbon picture can be put together. So just to build that API, I use these open source resources like electricity maps, CO2 signal, Teeds AWS SKU resources, and the cloud carbon footprint by ThoughtWorks. Next slide. Okay, so what were the key results that were developed? So we developed 3 major solutions. The first was region picker, which is like if you launch a SKU in US West 2 versus US West 1, you can be 75% more carbon efficient. So these are easy wins when launching a resource. Second is time picker. So launch the resource when the time is right or when renewable energy is available. Even Google has done a lot of research along this space. And the third is carbon cost optimizer, where we see vendors and enterprises coming in and pitching together for the solution. So the API work for this is open source currently, like the region picker and the time picker data, so that vendors can integrate it in their application. So that's something that we look forward to over the coming months. Secondly, so our team presented in Cornell Tech Open Studio. So there were around 85 teams in this journey, and we were among the top 5 teams there. Thirdly, FinOps is a thing that has not become viral till now in colleges. It might have become in enterprises. So around 500 students in Cornell are aware now what is FinOps. And I did talk to 3 professors at Cornell about the FinOps and why is it so important. So deeper understanding of the FinOps ecosystem, and everyone knows that interdisciplinary skills are needed to make this practice. Yes, thank you so much, JR.
Excellent, Simar. Thank you. There's great comments in the chat there as well. And I think we wanted to ask you a few questions. I think Ben from our team who worked with you on this about what's next for you in the project.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, Simar, it's been great fun working with you through this. And thank you for getting so excited and so involved. So the first thing I want to ask you, you mentioned that like 500 students at Cornell now have a good understanding of FinOps. Do you think that there ought to be now that's time yet for a dedicated FinOps educational program delivered by colleges or universities? And if you think so, which departments do you think ought to be sort of part of that as a sort of a joint disciplinary thing?
Okay. Thank you so much, Ben. I would absolutely think that it should be a part of the college programs. Just to give an example, I would have not been in this space, first of all. If this community did not exist, I would have mostly taken the traditional MBA routes, which is investment banking or consulting to get into. But since I was involved in the cloud cost space, this gave me an opportunity that the community was so helpful to get involved here. Secondly, I always see that there are courses that are going on now on the data science space, on the cryptocurrency space in the colleges, but there are no courses on FinOps or the cloud computing. Cloud computing is also taking off. So if we can train students in this journey, so when they join enterprises, the learning curve can be slightly less. Thirdly, a good starting point that I think can be is these e-learning courses, like Harvard has an e-learning course, MIT has an open courseware. So Ben, I know you teach every month. Can we post something on MIT courseware, open courseware with the FinOps thing, such that students have a much wider access to it? It is available for free for students.
Sounds like a conversation we should keep having. The next thing I want to ask you quickly is, so what's next for Simar? What's next for you? And what are the areas of FinOps that really light your fire and get you excited? What do you want to work in now?
So that's a tough question though. Okay, so I have had experience across usage optimization, rate optimization, and like have learned a lot of finance and reporting with this MBA, setting cultural practices, and have had finance experience from Goldman as well previously. So I want to tie it back all together, which I see in FinOps, like setting cultural practices, doing finance thing, and also on the technology side of things. So ultimate goal is to become a FinOps leader in 3 to 4 years from now, but have to start somewhere. So would love to work for enterprises when I'll be graduating in 2 to 3 months from now.
Amazing. Thank you, Simar. Definitely encourage you to go look back at the comments, folks. We're very excited about your content and your enthusiasm. And, you know, I think there's a topic that was hit on just generally here that we all kind of need to work on, and the foundation is thinking about long-term, which is, you know, certifications and things are great, but ultimately, you know, a lot of this content probably needs to make its way back into, you know, university education. Somebody asked about economics. I mean, cloud, you know, general tech certifications, engineering certifications, finance. I mean, all needs to sort of start to touch on this. So we're working over time to hopefully bring that in, and with great partnership with folks like Cornell and Syracuse. And if you know of others, you want to reach out to university to start getting FinOps content in. I think that's the long-term fix for making this part of the larger tech community. With that, I wanted to pass to Steve Trask to talk a little bit about the FinOps jobs ecosystem that we're seeing out there, and the long-awaited State of FinOps salary data overview as well.
Thanks very much, JR. Hey, everyone. As a common theme we're kind of seeing across this summit today is kind of like the ecosystem is very large. You know, all these logos have been hiring on our jobs board. It goes from enterprises to kind of like the GSIs to the platforms. There is such a rich ecosystem, and people do move about them. You know, as Alee kind of pointed out, and Simar is just kind of like looking at where to go next. So it's just to emphasize how rich this ecosystem is, and there's many different journeys away through it. Some additional points from the State of FinOps that 20% of practitioners started a new role in the last 12 months. So it's pretty significant proportion. And 22% of practitioners got promoted in the last 12 months. So it's really rewarding to see people progressing from the foundations perspective, advancing. And that there is huge opportunities for people to kind of like move around the ecosystem, progress and advance their roles. So it's wonderful to see. I would say kind of like moving on to the jobs board, it's very much, there are 231 jobs listed there today. There will be more tomorrow. We are picking up loads. Great shout out to William, who helped manage that for us. Interestingly enough, that just under half, about 47% of all jobs posted on there so far have actually been in Europe and Middle East and Africa. It's actually more than in North America, which is quite an interesting point. So yeah, there were lots there, and the majority being the mid-level contributor, but we are seeing kind of like all the way up to VP and executive. So it's really interesting to kind of have those opportunities for people to kind of like up-leveling, upskilling, and then taking that next step and wanting to kind of progress their career. Okay, we're going to show you some salaries now. So this is going to be what everyone's kind of like waiting for. Like last year, the data had clear alignment with the kind of like the seniority and the advancing the salaries. One note is individual contributors hold a high value. The large amount of them in the same bracket as the highest manager bracket of the $100,000 to $150,000. So it's interesting to see kind of like it does feel like there has been progression, the value of the individual contributor is being recognized there. And then another way we wanted to kind of split this is by region. I got asked this quite a few times in the last.
Just came up in the chat, actually. Perfect timing.
There we go. Yeah, it's kind of like I get asked this all the time, and I'd love to spend more time on this. Sometimes we can't kind of go down to such a country level because it might be so so few respondents, but we like to kind of group it. EMEA being Europe, Middle East, and Africa, North America, LATAM, and then kind of Asia Pacific as well. So what we're seeing is salaries related to region do vary, but they follow kind of like technology-based pay in the wider industries. North America is the highest paying region. You can see kind of like in the yellow there, kind of going into the higher bands, but also kind of like you can see EMEA and APAC kind of following close behind, and then LATAM at the top with a few kind of trailing off at the top end. One thing we do need to note on this so it is US dollars, and there has been, myself from being from the UK, there's definitely been a weaker pound and a stronger US dollar has kind of changed things in the last 6 months. So it is something worth taking consideration. I would love to kind of have questions on this, see what people's viewpoints on this, and kind of like, I'm just kind of looking at the chat as well and seeing what skill sets as well. We are talking to other data source providers as well now from the State of FinOps. We've got the jobs board and we've got other external ones. So we're looking at kind of like what skills are needed for these jobs. And I'd love to kind of look at like job descriptions and how the training can kind of match those as well. And also the bands that people are kind of supplying.
Right. Yeah, and I think in the chat there's questions about breaking up further. These are all things that we're looking to do. It's also a question of how many respondents in each territory, right, are there. So we do see a big chunk of community in Europe, a big chunk in Latin America, and APAC is sort of a smaller but growing region. I think it's only about 10 or 15% of our community at this point. I did note, I thought it was interesting. I mean, looking at Latin America, and just the size of the community there, and also I think the opportunity for more, especially in a COVID world, for more remote hiring for folks, given some of the salary ranges. I think there's real opportunities there for people to look at, and I think what we'd love to do, and we've got just a basic version of this going into the State of FinOps as well, but is collect some of these question comments about years of experience and areas they fit, and we'll look to do a longer report on this a bit later. But definitely, Steve, where's a good place in the Slack to questions about this? There's a State of FinOps channel, isn't there?
There is a State of FinOps channel, but I think ask us anything. I think that's a good spot to kind of kick off a conversation, and we can always move it into other spots.
After this. Yep.
Yeah, I am in the X breakout, so happy to answer any questions on that. But also, last year's data is on the website at data.finops.org. This will be going on there today, tomorrow. I am going to add a chart with aligned by experience, because I know we have that data, so that'll be an interesting split as well.
Great. And yeah, you can check out some of this data is not there yet, but all the rest of the data is on, as Steve mentioned, data.finops.org. And it's just killing me. I was debating about bringing it up, but in the chat, there was a question about why not just have finance do this work? And I think Sherry nailed the answer, right? Which is that FinOps is not financial operations. It's finance and DevOps working together, the portmanteau of the two groups, which means it needs engineering involvement, it needs finance involvement, it needs product involvement. And if you want some talk tracks around how to push back on that, because finance teams have a big part to play in FinOps, obviously, but there's a massive uplift in the cloud understanding. Definitely go check out some of the materials on FinOps.org, which break down what each group need to do. And on that topic, maybe something that Brent may be able to touch on. Brent has been in the FinOps community for a number of years with us and at other companies, doing other related industries for a bunch of years, and has built some really great FinOps teams and continues to do that. So we wanted to hear Brent's story around how he's structuring his teams, how they work together, and how he's starting to look at some of those skill sets as he does that from his experience at Box and other places. So Brent, over to you.
Thanks to the FinOps Foundation for inviting me to speak on this topic today. I've been doing this role for a long time, even back to like colo versus cloud and application service provider hosting. So part of it is, as you see the salary data and all the practitioners that are getting certified, the professionals that are getting certified, it's becoming more and more expensive to run one of these programs. But there's a reason that they pay so well. There's a lot of accountability and responsibility for being a fiduciary owner of these millions of dollars of cloud spends at these companies, and being a trusted shared service bureau to all cloud consuming units, many departments that are having a lot of data. There's just a lot to do. Great. So part of it is understanding the role. And so when you're looking at a core program leadership role, like a director of FinOps or a program manager, the whole goal is to make sure that you have someone that's understanding all the different products and interactions with your consumers and customers of your data. So from finance to management to application owners to infrastructure partners, and then the FinOps core team members that are really in the trenches. When you look at the data lake and reporting engineers, pretty much every program is requiring from the tools that you see in the FinOps data. Everyone has their own tool. They have to custom map and make logic and taxonomies and tags. They got to make the data usable so that all these answers they're expecting out of this program can be customized and delivered with clarity and scope. So that's another type of role that is very important to make sure that the data interchange and the calculations and then the data being available and then in whatever user interface they're interacting with. And then the last type of role is analysts. So analysts or senior analysts, this is really where you have a lot of the run the business work. And so the goal is make sure that you identify where your program is at. If you're in crawl phase, you might have a bunch of analysts doing work. But as you get to walk or run phase, you know, we've kind of automated like SKU pricing analysis versus the bill. And so that was something an analyst would do in a crawl phase, but in a walk or run phase, that can be done with predictive modeling and comparison with data in a data lake with some delta reporting, and an anomaly report goes out. So every month it just runs. And with multiple cloud providers and, like you said, hundreds of thousands of rows in the bill, thousands and thousands of SKUs, that's the kind of work. So as you're thinking about your program, think a year ahead. What would it look like? And should I have a full-time engineer or should I have a contractor? And so as you see with some of the salaries are growing. And so us as leaders, we have to make sure that we're managing the P&L of the staffing of the program as well. And so that leads me into the next slide. So when we have some advice, seeing these programs from many different companies, having done this for about 8 different companies now, talking with a bunch of people, trying to figure out what advice would I give? Make sure that you align to the team and the tools that you already have today. The goal of that is you can do a gap analysis on what kind of program are you asking me to do? Who do I have today for tools and people? And then build a roles and responsibility matrix so that you start operating and you start delivering. The next is, I'm not going to be able to do that with these limited people and these skills. I'm going to need to acquire more people. So now what you've done is you have justification to spend more money on a tool or more people in order to get those objectives done and prove that the ones you have are too busy. It very quickly gets into, we have too much to do across all the domains It's not just forecasting and budget alerts and spend commits. It's all the other domains that are in the FinOps program. Another one is make sure you're always convincing others to act. It doesn't matter how big your team is, you're always going to need to understand other folks' requests and business needs, and how are you going to get them to act? The whole goal is drive the behaviors that you want first. So get the right people if you want to deliver these actions or deliverables or answers, and make sure that you're getting adoption so that people are using what you want to build. Is it making its progress towards the deliverable with the team you have? Or do you need to maybe get a part-time person from a different team? Or can you get higher priority and start bringing up value? And so that brings me to the next slide as well. When you start having a larger team, let's say you've got a few analysts, you've got some contractors, you've got some full-time, you're in the middle of a multi-year program. There are certain things where, how are you going to keep all of them busy? So similar to what Kyndryl's slide brought up earlier in this presentation this morning, there's a lot going on. And so tactically, when you're doing, sprint planning or quarterly OKRs, what's really important to get done? And so loosely trying to give you guys something that, it's just an idea. If you take the FinOps domains as functional areas, and then you have a component, let's say like quantity unit forecasting. So it's at the SKU level by your capacity and your workload consumers. And then there's a very important technical decision that has to be made, meaning it's super important. It has high value. It's going to be around, and it's got a lot of downstream things. It's technical. You're going to have to find someone that really knows taxonomy and SKU mappings and logic files and cost splitting. And they're going to have to get that validated by people to make sure it meets what the company needs so that you can get consensus, agree, and go build and operate. And so as you see in the priorities, it may not be a finance priority to do SKU level quantity forecasting. But when you look at budget management, which is financial top-down money, well, that's a very important finance priority, but the capacity team is working at a different layer. And so there's still a separate taxonomy and mapping file that has to be built to pivot that dollar value so that they can tie back to each other. And so you can see the designer and the validators, there's a couple overlap, but they're different. And so when you're scheduling a quarter with these teams, how do you know what you need? And how do you identify if you don't have enough of those type of people? Or you may think it's a priority, or maybe you have a new employee. Who do they go to if they want to debate or enhance the design? And so it acts like an air traffic control system of who knows what who's doing. There's a lot of finger pointing going, no, I thought you did that. Oh, well, I didn't know who ran that. And so it kind of helps avoid all of this, who's doing what, and prioritize where we're at and make sure everyone knows what's a priority for that quarter. And if not, you might have to push it to the next quarter or re-engineer it. So that's just some of the items that I wanted to share with you on how I think about organizing a large team, and then it helps to justify the staff and the priorities to make sure the business is getting what they want in that quarter. Next slide, please. So important technical decisions, you got to make sure they're done by a domain expert. If you're the domain expert and you're practicing up, great. You still got to get it validated. Make sure that you can move forward quickly. You want to be able to design and get consensus to move forward on these very important upstream things, because everything flows down in analytics and filters and groups and alerts by tags and data models. So it's very important to get those iterated and updated as the companies mature. And another one is make sure you're planning like maybe 1 year ahead or 18 months ahead. Do I really want to bring in a full-time analyst that maybe we're going to code out? Or maybe that should not be a manual analyst work. And so the other one is being able to align with the budget and the savings and run it like your own company. And so that brings me to the last slide here, which is think like a business owner. Imagine it was your own money and your own goals, and you run it like a mini P&L inside the enterprise. how would you pay for the tools and the people and make sure you're delivering a huge ROI on savings, value, all the unit economics, the environmental benefits, right? So typically, from my opinion, my goal is not to have a large team. I want to have the right team, and I want to be looking at how do we automate and interact with these groups for self-service, right? So how do we get them to be adopting the FinOps culture in their models or in their architecture patterns or in the CI/CD pipeline, where you're working together and financially aware DevOps is the end goal. And so what behavior will you drive to say we are financially aware DevOps? They know what line of code produces costs. They have these optimizations. They have these guardrails we've already put in invisibly for them. And how would you staff that program to achieve those end goals? And so we'll have another breakout session after this main presentation. So I'll hop in there. There's so much more to talk about, but thank you for having me speak on this today.
Hey, thanks, Brent. I know it's all stressful when the tech issues happen, so appreciate you coming right back in and making it happen so well. It's funny, people shouldn't get excited about responsibility matrices, but I think it's such a big part of FinOps, right? Which is figuring out who's doing what. And I think that type of work is really important, right, for us to put out there. And I think you hit exactly the right thing, which is all of this is about driving behavior at the end of the day by various teams, and you need the right structure to do that. Did want to give a shout out to the FinOps pod. So many great stories on there coming out right now. Keith Austin, who's based in Hong Kong as part of AIA, doing a massive cloud transition, is the latest one. Definitely recommend checking out that session. And thank you to all the longer tail of general members of the FinOps Foundation, again, who make everything that we do possible via best practices, community, education, all those areas. FinOps is sort of a three-legged stool, right, with people, technology, and processes. And so definitely find that organizations use about 3.7 tools in the last State of FinOps data for accomplishing their practice. So check out these folks to help with the various areas they need. As part of that, we also have a FinOps certified service provider program. There's a new version of this actually being updated right now to make it even better at describing how organizations plug in the FinOps ecosystem. But excited to announce that the latest organization to be certified under that program is Deloitte, as well as StrataScale. So thank you them for being a part of it, but also all the contributions into the community. Let's go ahead on into some of the more content, though, to talk about working groups. So earlier when I talked about the three things we do, right, there's community, there's education, and then there is best practices and standards. These working groups are the ones that come out with those best practices and standards that our Technical Advisory Council vets and goes into the FinOps.org framework. And we're going to jump right into the working group updates that Andrew Nim, who's stepping in for Samantha White on our team, who's out today, is going to talk about best practices coming down the pipeline.
Definitely. We're going to make this a little fun. I see your Zen moment slides like sip of water, and I'm going to raise you a haiku. Ready, everyone? Working group update. Cool, warm spring breeze of info. All thanks to you all. So first, a huge thank you to all of our working group contributors. It's because of you that we can keep collecting amazing practitioner stories and refine our best practices and standards. So we're going to roll through this left to right. On the far left column, you'll see 4 of our top incubating working group ideas. So based on conversations from our community, it seems like our commitment strategy idea needs to be moved forward. We would love to see hands and voices in the chat channel for folks who are interested in this. Cost optimization is also seeking support. There is a working group open channel if you want to go hop in and see what all that is about. KPIs is a topic that folks have also expressed interest in at a previous summit. So we definitely want to start building this out for April. And we also might have a recruiting FinOps talent working group that can kick off in April as well. In the middle column, you'll see our 10 active working groups. Everyone's working really hard on producing valuable content for our community. And on the far right, you'll see all of our graduated ones. You can see all of those working group outputs on our website, FinOps.org. All right. Quick shout out and focus to the newly minted commitment-based discounts working group. This working group call actually begins next week. It's a huge thanks to the community for all the interest and expertise in this working group and its topic. We kick off next week. We're looking forward to producing content, educating others on commitment-based discount strategies and best practices to drive maximum value for your organizations. This working group will also address commitment-based discount offerings across the top 3 cloud service providers. If you have expertise here and you want to join, please, yeah, exactly. Raise your hand in the chat channel, make some noise, get hyped, and let Sam know. For any general inquiries, you want to see what's going on and whatnot, feel free to visit our events page on FinOps.org. You can also fill out an interest form if there's a working group you really want to join or need more info about. We're here to answer questions and help. To dig in a little further, we have Jesse DeRose from our social aspects working group and Courtney Borman from Gamification to give us some updates. And I believe we're passing the mic to Jesse first.
Yes, hello. So as JR mentioned earlier, FinOps is a practice that involves collaboration between finance, DevOps, engineering, product, even security or IT, all these different roles that need to work together. And collaboration is one of many soft skills FinOps practitioners need to develop to build healthy relationships with folks in those various roles to increase the frequency of collaboration and the quality of collaboration. So that's the mission of our working group, of the social aspects working group, providing educational resources and concrete building blocks to enable FinOps practitioners to grow those soft skills, to build healthy relationships within their team and with those other roles. So Sprint 1 starts with the basics. To build a healthy relationship with other teams, practitioners need to foster trust with those teams, similar to what we heard from our keynote speakers earlier. So we developed a guide that highlights the importance of trust in FinOps, the building blocks of trust, and how practitioners can introduce trust into their daily work. Next slide, please. So the American neuroscientist Paul J. Zak explored the concept of trust in a number of experiments and surveys, and ultimately found that compared with people at low trust companies, companies where there wasn't a lot of trust between employees, people at high trust companies reported reported all of these benefits you see here: 74% less stress, 106% more energy at work, 50% higher productivity, 76% more engagement, 29% more satisfaction with their lives, and 40% less burnout. So I'm going to stop there for a second and let that sink in. That's less stress, more energy, higher productivity, all these really great things, all because they worked in a high trust environment. So that tells us why trust is important. Now, what can we ultimately do to build trust? The next slide, please. To build trust, a practitioner must embody behaviors that build trust. This is where that soft skills component comes in. This is where the skills part comes in. This is some of the important skills that practitioners need to grow to build trust. Communicate the importance of FinOps work to key stakeholders and personas. Highlight and celebrate wins. Create some momentum that incentivizes employees to get involved. Be consistent in your actions. Be open and be honest. Always provide context for the information that you're sharing. Maybe a great optimization opportunity will save the company tons of money, but will require a lot of engineering effort. Giving teams all of that context empowers them to make an informed decision for themselves. And keep your commitments. If you say you're going to dive into some unclear spend data and get back to them, make sure that you actually do that. Clarifying that data, keeping that commitment could ultimately be the make it or break it moment for that particular team to start practicing all this FinOps work, to buy into a cost-conscious culture. So that's a preview of what we're working on. And if you go to the next slide, I can talk about where we're going next. Now that we've talked about trust in healthy relationships, our next two sprints focus on communication in healthy relationships. First up, a communication playbook to help practitioners build their communication strategy, and then a persona communication playbook with use cases that provide actionable steps practitioners can take to build and repair trust with various personas. And then we'll focus on accountability and healthy relationships, creating a RACI matrix that helps practitioners know who in their company should be responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed for each FinOps activity. And most importantly, we want to hear from all of you. We want to include a broad variety of practitioner stories of building or repairing trust with other stakeholders. So please, 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 please share your stories with us in the Google form that is linked here. And I believe Suha already also shared it. Thank you, Suha, in the chats. So please, if you have stories to share, we'd love to hear from you. And we'd also like to know, what do you wish you knew about trust and relationship building when you started your FinOps journey? You can join us in the chat, social aspects channel in Slack to share your answer there. And if all of that work sounds exciting and you want to join us, email the email address on this slide to get added to the working group. Next slide, please. Finally, a huge thank you to all of our contributors and supporters. We absolutely could not have done this without all of you. And if you have any questions about our working group or the content that I shared, join us in the breakout room at the end of this meeting. That's all I have.
Awesome, Jesse. Thank you for doing that. And yeah, folks who are asking in the chat about the content being available, I don't know if you saw, Jesse, a lot of folks want to see this. This is work in progress stuff, right? So this is a preview into what the working groups are doing. And this will all end up on FinOps.org in various formats a bit later. So I hope to hear more from Jesse and crew later. And if you are interested in this topic, we're going to have Jesse and some of the other working group folks in the breakout at the end to answer questions. Great to finally get you on a summit too, Jesse. You've been around for a long time, haven't presented yet. Awesome. So with that, we're going to jump over to gamification.
All right, thank you, JR. I'm Courtney Borman. I work for General Mills and have had the pleasure of leading the working group for gamification. And we really set out, we've got 2 sprints as part of our working group. The first one here we've wrapped up, which was to develop a guide for gamification, to really provide this community with, that step-by-step practices. What are the key considerations to think about? So gamification is simply the process of making a business activity more like a game, or deploying game-like elements within it. And the goal is really, motivating employees, making work more engaging, more fun, and it provides a lot of benefits to the organization. So as part of our gamification guide, we really set out to explain, intent and objectives, the behaviors and outcomes that could be considered from a gamification initiative, as well as those rewards, and of course, alignment to the FinOps framework. So as we take a look here at the next slide, a couple of things that I want to call out for all of you is gamification can be really useful in promoting that business value that we're all focused on. So you can have different initiatives focused on different areas. Some of them that are at the top of the list would be FinOps education, of course, process improvement, or perhaps establishing or even reinforcing a FinOps culture at your organization. And then, of course, really great employee retention benefits as well as you work to build that culture. Some key considerations, though, to make sure that you're thinking through, as no 2 organizations are alike and no 2 FinOps practices, your budget, the time you want to allot for it, different personas. So are you going to focus on the FinOps team itself, or perhaps your engineers that are taking action, as well as your maturity within the FinOps processes? And then, of course, tools. What do you have available to you to track your FinOps initiative? An effective game also considers the needs and motivations of the target audience. So making sure, right, that there's not just something in it for the corporation, but also for the individuals that are participating. As we take a look here at the next slide and what is coming up for the gamification group, we'll be collecting user stories from the community to really build a library of FinOps gamification examples. So we're seeking both successful as well as unsuccessful gamification attempts. So we want to provide those to this community to make sure people can learn as they're thinking about starting their own gamification examples. So from here, if you have a story, would greatly appreciate you filling out a quick form. I can attest, I personally filled it out for a gamification initiative we did at General Mills. It doesn't take long, and it will be super valuable to the community. And then if you'd love to join us for our sprint to work on creating this library, again, please email the wgs@finops.org. And lastly, let's talk about our most important slide here that we have, which is the fabulous people that have worked to bring gamification together. So just want to give a shout out here to Soundthar, Yogendra, Philip, Rishikesh, and of course, Mike. So a great group doing this. And also a plug, I think Alee said at the beginning of this presentation, making sure that you're building your FinOps expertise as well as that community. And I can just attest that the working groups are a fabulous way to do that. So if you're looking to get involved, would love to have you here, or of course in another working group that you're passionate about.
Courtney, I advanced slides for a lot of people, and I think you're one of the best at just like working in the transition, keeping talking without waiting. It's a masterful art. It's like, I know right when you want me to advance. Also want to give a shout out. Courtney did a fantastic talk last year at FinOps X, probably the best titled one, which was, what is it? FinOps, not FinOps?
The good, the bad, the ugly, I think was.
There we go.
What we had, yeah.
I just put that into the chat. Definitely worth watching. It was an oldie but a goodie from last year. JR here from the FinOps Foundation. Thank you for watching. Please go to finops.org if you want to get plugged into this amazing community. And of course, hit subscribe right here on YouTube to get all the future content. Hope to see you soon.